This is the Friday update, which happens every Friday on YouTube now, or most Fridays. The FOP Fraternal Order Police President John Catanzara does these videos on YouTube to update his constituency, the troops, the patrol officers in the Chicago Police Department, some detectives I think are also covered. Okay, first, John Catanzara. We're doing research on him too. It's going to be published this summer. Around 50 complaints. And in some of those complaints, there are multiple elements involved in those complaints. So it's not just 50 single allegations. One complaint may have 5 allegations in it. He's had 50 complaints filed against him, mostly by fellow police officers, very few by actual civilians. How bad do you have to be that the Blue Wall of Silence complained about you 30 or 40 times? Think about how bad of a cop do you have to be? I mean, he's in the upper echelon of cops with the most complaints, according to the Citizen Public Data dashboard by the Invisible Institute, which I'm not remembering the whole name of at the moment. Sorry about that, guys. But he is got to be, with that record, you'd have to think you would consider him in any other job one of the worst employees. How many of you get to keep your job when 30 or 40 of your fellow employees have filed complaints against you? A few of them have gone through the process, been sustained, gone through the superintendent. They've moved to fire him. The police board wouldn't fire him, but they suspended him. He's had multiple suspensions. Who keeps their job? Who gets in a position then to run a union and be able to help dictate policies around discipline? I mean, it's unbelievable. So I wanted to say that to start out, to give you a little bit of background about what you're looking at. Also, this has 2 pieces. One is about a guilty verdict in the case of attempted murder and a couple of aggravated battery charges against Officer Veronica, not against her, but in the case where she was the victim. Officer Veronica Murillo was assaulted on the job back in 2016. That case just wound up either yesterday or the day before with a guilty verdict. I think he got convicted of 2 ag bat charges and maybe 2 resisting arrest charges. Did not get on the attempted murder charge. What happened to her? Awful. She supposedly, how much you can believe from Catanzara, has traumatic brain injury. It's awful. I wish her nothing but the best. I hope for speedy recovery. I hope she's doing well. Hope she has, I have nothing bad to say about her. I wish the incident never happened. So he talks about that conviction first. So this is what I'm going to play in the clip. And then we get to the Anthony Alvarez spin in clip 2 about the shooting. And I want you to listen to it because it's very interesting how he tries to spin it. So let's go to clip 1 and I'll be back in 2 minutes.
All right. Good evening. It's not Friday, but some events definitely necessitate an update before Friday. There was a trial at 26th and Cal that concluded this afternoon for Officer Veronica Murillo, who was the victim of an aggravated battery and attempted murder by a subject who was high on PCP in October of 2016. I'm somewhat happy to announce, at least, that the offender was found guilty of 2 counts of aggravated battery and 2 counts of resisting, but they did not get a guilty verdict for the attempted murder charge. Sentencing will be sometime in May. Stand by for what that ends up being. I will say many people will remember that incident. Officer Murillo will never return to duty. She has a traumatic brain injury from that incident that will definitely change the rest of her life indefinitely. It just highlights how quickly a simple routine incident that many of us dealt with on a daily basis sometimes with some knucklehead who's just being combative or non-compliant turns ultra-violent in a split second, and it changes an officer's life. You know, the reality is then Superintendent Johnson said that Murillo would have been justified in shooting that offender in that scenario in fear of her own life. People need to remember that standard. In fear of your own life, or great bodily harm. Officer Murillo articulated that part of her hesitancy was the Laquan McDonald shooting, and that she didn't want to be scrutinized like Jason Van Dyke did for that shooting and second guessed. That is a recurring theme as we go forward here about officers not wanting to be second guessed, because everybody is second guessed.
Okay, so like I said, all sympathy for the officer. But let's talk about spin from the FOP. The Laquan McDonald murder, which is what it was a murder. Believe it or not, he still won't say it. He still backs, thinking Officer Van Dyke did nothing wrong in that case. That murder is on you. The cover-up that happened, the lying that happened, the false reports that got filed, that's on the police department, not on Laquan and not on the public. God forbid, in a democracy, the people speak up and say, you know what? We don't like that behavior from our government officials. Which honestly, Catanzara, he's all for that. He filed a report on the superintendent, which is why they might fire him now. He's up on charges in front of the Chicago Police Board. He spouts out anytime he wants about government officials. The only people that cannot be questioned in a democracy is the police. Don't question. The public's supposed to be worried when they speak out and say, you know what? We don't want someone shooting someone for absolutely no reason and then lying about it. We don't want a police officer doing that. We have to worry, no, you know what? We got to let you shoot people, whoever you are. White people, shoot as many unarmed or not threatening black people as possible. Shoot them all. Don't worry about it, because the last thing we want to do is you be hesitant in your job. So just keep killing them as many as you want. How obscene is that? How lunatic right-wing is that? It's unbelievable. So as a citizen, he should be able to have all the rights to question anyone he wants and any government official he wants, but don't question the police. Nope, because it might make them second guess their jobs. That's your fault. That's the police department's fault. Stop shooting unarmed black people for no goddamn reason. Or black people that he did. He had a little knife and he was walking away from the officer, who, by the way, all the other officers on the scene had the thing handled. He came out of nowhere, got out of his car and shot him 16 goddamn times. That's your fault. That's your officer's fault. That's the department's fault. You're worried about what the public feels about someone who just outright murders someone and they're wearing a police uniform, so you think they should just get away with it? That's your fault. Are you kidding me? You're fine. And let me tell you, back up a second. This guy backed the insurrectionists. His first comments after they stormed the Congress, which I'm a mile from, stormed it, and were headhunting Congress people. His was like, well, people are pissed. They have a right to be pissed. What are you talking about? So those people were fine with questioning government in the way they did it. But the public just voicing it in a nonviolent way, protests and like speaking out in the newspapers, on TV, and being like just voting differently because of it. That's not allowed. That may make a cop second guess what he does. You'll have to find a way around it. Or get your people to stop shooting black people that aren't a threat or don't have a weapon. Stop having them shooting. And then you won't have to worry about repercussions of bad shootings. Just stop the bad shootings from happening. But I have never heard Catanzara speak once on anything he thought was a bad shooting. Because there can't be. It's impossible. The cops never do anything wrong. They do nothing but right. It's ridiculous. This guy's all for questioning government except the police. Don't question them because he's the police. He's beyond being questioned. It's obscene and hypocritical. But that's what you get. All right, so we are going to go to the second clip now. And I'll come back. This one run time about 4 minutes.
That parlays into my second point here. It's expected tomorrow or in the next day or two, video will be released of a shooting in the 16th district a few weeks ago of an 21-year-old offender that was shot and killed by the police. We know already what the spin is going to be, what certain people in the community, even some politicians, are going to try and make this out to be, because the offender was struck in the back with gunfire. The reality is, and the video will show, that the offender was known to the police because the day before he had taken off from the police in a vehicle. And since we can't really do vehicle pursuits, they had to let him go. But they absolutely knew he was the driver. They had previously gotten into an incident with him when he was in a domestic with the mother of his child, where I'm told that he was threatening to kill her, and that ended up in a foot chase too, where he was arrested by this same officer. So the offender was clearly known as a problem child to the police, no doubt. That being said, the night in question, they see him on foot. They go to stop him to talk to him about the car the day before. He flees on foot, drops the bags that he had, and starts running, grabbing his side, and at some point, removing a gun from his waistband. The officer giving chase can clearly see the weapon as he's closing the distance on the offender. The offender rounds a corner and starts running up a block and actually slips and falls on a front lawn, which allows the officer to close the gap even further. By the time the offender gets up and starts running again, he readjusts course, turning to his left in the direction of where the officer's coming around the corner. The officer, with the gun in plain sight, fears that the offender is going to turn and start firing on him because that's the motion he was making. So he starts firing at the offender as he tactically moves to his left to try and go to cover along the parked cars to his left. There is nothing wrong with this shooting just because the bullets struck the offender from behind. There's nothing saying the bullets have to be from the front. You can easily, and I challenge anybody who thinks otherwise, to stand behind me, or anybody for that matter, with a gun. And if you don't think someone could just stick their arm backwards and shoot backwards, all it takes is one shot. Our officers are not obligated, again, I'll say it 1,000 times, to sustain gunfire or gunshot wounds in order to return fire. All you need is the fear of bodily harm or death to you or someone else in order to take action. This officer clearly was in fear of being shot when he fired upon the offender, striking him. It is 100% good shooting, but we know what the narrative is going to be and what the knee-jerk reaction is going to be about throwing the officer under the bus. It's important for the public to at least try and look at these videos with an open mind and not from a Monday morning quarterback perception. You know, as I started this conversation with Officer Murillo, how quickly things can change. We do not have to be attacked first in order to take action. We can take preemptive actions to restrict somebody from attacking us, whether with a gun or any other weapon, including their hands. This incident went down the way it did. We support this officer's actions. The department has supported this officer's actions. The public is going to be, I'm guessing, a little different story because sadly, there's going to be politicians throwing this officer under the bus and calling for his hide. But just know that the FOP is never going to just say okay to a narrative because a politician, COPA, the mayor, or any even law enforcement official says otherwise. The rules of engagement are very clear. This officer followed them, and again, I just would caution anybody to lower the rhetoric and just concentrate on the facts and take the emotion out of the equation.
Okay, and we're back. Okay, so there is some spin going on. First of all, the background is virtually irrelevant. Unless he had some history of shooting at every police officer he saw or something, that background's irrelevant. That's spin. Next. Saint or devil, irrelevant. Whether the guy's a saint or a devil, whatever, irrelevant. All that matters is what was he doing? What did he do that caused the shooting? excuse me, not what he did a week ago, a day ago, an hour ago, 6 months ago. We try to put value on people. That spin, it's coded language. It's usually about race, black person, bad, gang member, young black guy, gang member, whatever. Don't make a difference. He could be the worst guy or the best guy. It's an irrelevant issue. What did he do that caused the officer to shoot him, or did he do nothing? Was there no cause? That is the only question that matters. Now, I think I've checked with sources today that Catanzara to some extent is right in that as long as the officer has an articulable reason for why he shot, and it's remotely reasonable in his head to have that thought, it's okay to shoot. That to me is a problem. I don't necessarily agree with that. I do agree with something my sources say that, a person being shot in the back doesn't automatically mean it's a bad shoot. And I agree with that. I can see circumstances where someone would have a gun and he's mostly turned in the other direction, but he raises the gun backward, behind him and causes the officer to shoot them. I think that is reasonable under certain circumstances. I'm not saying in this case, I haven't watched the video. But you got to understand the spin. Once he starts to spin things and talk about the background, how bad of a guy he was and the officer knew him, that's irrelevant material. And that signals to me bad shooting. Without even looking at the videotape, the FOP spin signals to me that it's a bad shooting. We'll see whether it is or not. We'll keep you updated on the spin. We're going to be watching these videos and bringing them to you. But it is definitely a spin thing.